right now is I'll map out a plan. And I said, and by the way, I'm getting back because Tiger's going to win the comp and I'm going to be playing in the grand final. And he's like, okay, yep, righto. And I said, and I'm going to play for Australia at the end of the year. And I just remember all the sort of boys just stopped and like stopped the skills drill and just looked over at me. And they would take it the piss, for the first sort of month, 6 weeks. And then it was the realization, like, he's back running and he dislocated his hips 6 weeks ago. And he's back running. This is like crazy. And then 2 minutes in the game, first took a tap. I think I ran into maybe Joey Leilua and Elliot Whitehead off a tap, and they just absolutely crushed me, dropped me, and I felt the pop again. I felt both ribs go. And I looked up at the scoreboard and it was like two minutes into the first half. And I'm like, you just know, it's like, I can't go off. No. Like, I'm not burning interchange. I've just got to suck it up for 38 minutes. And I know I've just got to hang in there with the pain, and I'll get a needle at half time just to take the pain away. So all of it is around, I relate it back to sport, and whether it's my own personal experiences, what I've seen work, what I've seen hasn't worked, and to help, because they're just principles that apply in not even business, but in life,
What actually separates good from elite? Most people think it's talent, but it's something far less comfortable. Today's guest has lived that gap. Chris Lawrence debuted in the NRL as a schoolboy, represented Australia in the Four Nations, and played under coaches like Tim Sheens and Ivan Cleary, where clarity of role wasn't optional and standards were unforgiving. He shares a few raw stories from his playing days, pressure moments, playing through injury, and what the elite environment really looks like from the inside. Now, as founder of One Training, he applies those same elite principles to business and leadership. Identity under pressure, disciplined execution, and purpose beyond the game. We unpack serious injury, big goals that stretch you, the subconscious patterns driving behaviour, and what it really takes to raise your standard when no one's watching. This episode will make you rethink how you define your own ceiling. Because once you see the gap between good and elite, you can't unsee it. I'm Ian Hawkins, and this is Sport is Life. The purpose of sport, as I see it, is to see your vision become a reality. Find your voice, create strong connections, and learn to trust your body. Okay, Chris, how you going?
I'm going really well, thanks. Thanks for having me, mate.
You're welcome. I appreciate it. We were just talking before we hit record, how fast time goes, and just looking back at your career, and it's amazing how much we forget about the past. I'm sure there's plenty that you still remember very fondly, but it's amazing when you transition into business and the rest of your life that a lot of those things become distant memories, right?
Yeah, it does. You sort of, at certain points in your life, things sort of seem to go slow, and probably those times of pre-season days. I just remember pre-season used to feel like a 6-week pre-season felt like 6 months, but now you sort of blink and it's footy season 1 minute, you open your eyes and it's trials again. So a bit different when you're playing, and likewise with business and everything like that. So it's certain things definitely go slow, but I look back definitely different stages, 20 years ago, and it does feel like it's yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I saw one of your posts that you did on pre-season. Obviously, you were watching the boys flogging themselves more recently. Everyone talks about how tough it is, but what was a good part of pre-season? What was the part that actually felt like, okay, we're ready to go here? Like, was it a connection thing? Was it like when you suddenly things start to unfold well?
Yeah, I think like anything, when you go through uncomfortable or situations, or get out of your comfort zone, and you're doing it, with other people, you build a sense of mutual respect. As hard as some of the sessions were, that feeling when you've achieved and accomplished and finished a session, and looking at the guy next to you, and the respect to know that how much effort you put in and how much you're hurting, and you look across and there's 30 other guys that have just gone through the same thing. So you build that connection through hard work and getting through it. So that does bring you tighter. There's definitely other ways you can bond and build connection, but aside from obviously getting fit and prepared physically for a long season, it does bring doing hard training and uncomfortable things brings you together. That's why it's no secret why clubs do army camps and different types of pre-season camps to get uncomfortable in different situations, because doing it it gets you out of comfort zone, challenges you, and really uncovers some growth. But it's more than that feeling of accomplishment and getting through it and that mutual respect. So yeah, that's definitely probably not a lot of things about pre-season I probably miss, but that feeling of a Friday, and if back end of the week, it's usually big week and you finish off with a big session. That feeling when you finished a big week or a big session and you're laying on the ground after a session, just stretching up, and you look around, everyone's just got nothing left in the tank. That's where sort of connections built.
Oh, I love that. Now, you also had some challenging pre-seasons and during the season, well-documented, decent amount of injuries, a couple of pretty nasty ones. That must have, as challenging as that must have been another moment in your footy career where you built a mental toughness and resilience that would have given you so many great skills for the back end of your career and also for now your life in business.
Yeah, definitely. I think no one wants to go through, really challenging times. But as you mentioned, it does build resilience, and really everyone is a resilient person in their own right. There's a lot of people, when you go through different things, might label you as having these characteristics. But for me, a resilient person is just someone who goes, outside their what they feel is capable, when they have to. Like when you are put in a situation and you just have to endure, people do, and people are very, a lot of people in all domains, it doesn't have to be sport, business and family, like people probably surprise themselves when they have to extend beyond their ordinary capabilities, just what they're capable of. And so when you're faced with that situation and you've got no way, no other option, just to grit your teeth and get through it, and then you come out the other side and you realize, oh wow, there's I've got a lot more in the tank, and I'm probably underestimating just what I'm capable of, and also too, it gives you the confidence to know that challenges in the future, whatever they may be, you've been through things that are hard before, and it gives you the blueprint or the confidence that you can overcome future challenges. So more than anything, it probably just grounds you and gives you that sense of belief, again, and resilience. And that's all it is, that when the next challenge comes, whatever that looks like, because in life we're throwing curveballs all the time, that you have the ability to outlast it and get through it.
Yeah, it's a great answer. It's a bit of a cliche, but it is true. Is when you go through those darkest days, it builds capabilities and skills that you just didn't know you were capable of. And I'm often, when I'm coaching, I'm giving that reminder, and because it's hard to see it when you're in it, right? I'm sure in those times you had some dark moments. I want to actually just talk about something. It was actually the reason I reached out to you. It was your post about the power of the subconscious mind. This is after your 2011 hip dislocation, and you had an extraordinary year on the back of that. But just to explain a little bit about the process you went through. Obviously, straight after the injury, it's not something you're diving straight into, but you set yourself some pretty lofty goals and use that power of the subconscious mind to achieve some pretty amazing things that year in 2011.
Yeah, so again, that injury started really early on in the 2011 season. Was coming off the back of 2010 for the West Tigers' point of view, probably a missed opportunity to make a grand final and potentially win a grand final. I was fortunate enough to make my Australian Test debut at the back end of that year. So was, coming into, I suppose, the prime, years within my, football career. And early on in the season, I dislocated me, freak accident. Knew, obviously, that it was a serious injury, because I knew I dislocated my hip, knew it was serious. Was pretty, unknown about how bad it was. It's quite painful. Everyone asked me, that was definitely the most painful injury. Yeah. Did not tip at all. Hip was out for close to 3 hours, where I had to get back to the hospital, and they put me under and had to put the hip back in. I still remember sort of asking the doctors and that when I sort of came to about, did everything get a go back in all right? And they said, yeah, well, yeah, it went back in all right. We had 6 doctors and nurses pulling, some standing on your chest, others yanking, and I sort of said, look, I just wanted a yes or no. I didn't need the details. And from there, it's sort of within the next couple of days, realised, I suppose, the severity of it. And the main issue and complication coming off the back of it was that because my hip was out of its socket for longer than sort of 2.5 hours, there was an increased risk of losing blood flow to the top of the hip, which meant if that was the case, I would need a hip replacement, which meant that would be the end of my career. So the hardest part about that was I wouldn't know 100% certain until sort of the 3-month mark, once everything had healed and they did a scan sort of 3 months. So that was really challenging, like the uncertainty, not only the hip, the injury, and you think, is that my season done? I'm going to miss out on a grand final. Had such a belief that we're going to do something well that year. I'm like, I'm going to miss out on rep footy. Personally, I'm like, well, what's that going to be for my career? All these things running through your head, and probably it was I'd say about a week and a half into it, and I just really struggled. Just I couldn't sleep. Just the uncertainty was sort of eating into me, and I just remember having a conversation with a physio at the time, and I just said, look, I just needed something to focus on. Let's set a rehab plan so I could just focus to get back. He said, okay, let's map out a plan to get you back next year. And I said, no, I need something to work with. Getting back next year is just, not good enough. I said, what's the quickest anyone's ever come back from a hip dislocation? And the physio said, I think 3 months. So I said, all right, I'm going to come back and play in 90 days. And he said, look, let's just settle down. The season's done. We'll prepare for next year. And I said, no, I've got all this uncertainty. At least if I have a sole focus and throw everything into this, what's the worst that can happen? And I said, look, otherwise I'm just going to be sitting, thinking in 3 months' time, at least if I can hold my hat on in 3 months' time, if I get a scan and that means the end of my career, I can say I did everything possible to get back. That's what I want to hang my hat on. He goes, okay, yeah, all right, no worries, I'll map out a plan. And I said, and by the way, I'm getting back because Tigers going to win the comp and I'm going to be playing in the grand final. And he's like, okay, yep, righto. And I said, and I'm going to play for Australia at the end of the year. And again, I was sort of just at that point where I'm just saying, yep, this is what I'm doing. And it was a bit out of sort of jest and a bit out of I'm doing it. This is what I'm doing. And again, saying, these really rash, I suppose, goals and things like that. But for me, it was like, you just, for the physio, give me a goal and target every day that I can come into training. All I have to focus on that day or that week is that target. And for me, it took away the uncontrollables and all the things and the thoughts that, things out of your control. And I just focused on, what was in my control. But also, too, the fact that, whether that was in naivety. And again, it was just me saying, I'm coming back and playing 9 days. We're winning a comp and I'm playing for Australia at the end of the year. And I would say that to, a couple of weeks after my injury, coming back into training on crutches, and players would look at me going, yeah, sure, mate. Again, it became a running joke. A lot of the guys, a few weeks in, what day are you up to? And I'd be like, day 17, I'm doing bodyweight squats. Day 25, I'm doing this day. And I knew every day what my day, what day of the injury it was and what my target was. And it became a bit of a running joke until I think it was probably maybe day 40 or 40, like midway through. And I still remember I came out onto the field, the boys were training, just doing their team drills, and all the rehab group who can run are sort of on the side, and they come out after. And then I just started a jog, just a trot to warm up. And then I just remember all the sort of boys just stopped and stopped the skills drill and just looked over at me, and they would take it the piss, for the first sort of month, 6 weeks. And then it was the realization, he's back running, and he dislocated his hips 6 weeks ago. And he's back running. This is crazy. And then again, I just ticked off every milestone, and I ended up coming back. I think it was just over 90 days. I didn't make the 90-day milestone, but for me, I think there was a buy in there. So I'm like, nah, that's for me, that counts as a goal. And then that year, we unfortunately didn't go on to win the comp. I think we got back and made a run of 10 in a row and got beaten in the finals. But I then went on to play every game in the Four Nations, tour that year and played in the Four Nations final, sort of in England. So I just remember at the back end of that year, reflecting afterwards, I'm like, this in November, I'm like, in March, if you had told me, I guess actually it was when I was sitting, with Keith Galloway and we were sort of sitting holding the trophy, walking around the field, I'm like, if you had told me in March that right now, end of November, I'm walking around holding the Four Nations trophy with you, obviously you're crazy. As much as I just said it out loud, and so that just taught me so many lessons about, we talk about the subconscious mind, telling yourself you're going to do it, and you can't just, scream, affirmations and just sit down and not do anything. I can't say I'm going to come back and play, in 90 days if then I just go and sit at home for the first 3 weeks. Like I needed to do the actions, but I just kept saying it, and I'm like, I just at the time, and I usually was probably reserved in being really outlandish with my goals, but I just was like, well, what have I got to lose? Because it could be all taken away from me. So what have I got to lose? And obviously, I was fortunate enough, before I came out to play, that the scan came back and it was fine. It was, obviously some wear and tear, but blood flow was fine and gave me the ability to come back.
Amazing. Where do you reckon that came from? I know you said you just thought you got nothing to lose, but is this something that, like, were your parents strong on goal setting and having targets? You've got obviously the success in your family. Your sister's got a well-documented media career. Is it something you think was ingrained in you guys as a kid, or is you just pick it up as you go? What do you reckon sort of drove
probably,
that?
Yeah, a bit of everything. Like, you're again coming through, high school, and I enjoyed school and I did really well at school, and coming through the sort of junior system through West and through the pathways, and obviously then into the Tigers, you're always encouraged to set goals, and like you are at all stages. And I don't know specifically what that moment or where it was where I started doing it, but again, I do know, even going back into sort of high school years, like I didn't necessarily set a goal to play first grade in high school. Always had the goal to play first grade, but I actually had a goal to get over 90 in my HSC, and I wrote it down. I had it on my wall every day, and I just saw 90, like the number 90 everywhere, and I was fortunate enough to achieve that. And then it's again that without sort of knowing how powerful that was, then you sort of go and not necessarily wasn't that penny drop moment then, but it was more, I would just do it and not realize, well, I've actually done it before in a different way, and then I've done it before, and then so again, without even realizing when I got to that point, it was just something that I did, and it wasn't like, oh, I did set these goals in high school and I achieved them, and by saying them and writing them down, I can achieve them. Was just, I think it was more out of, I'd rather set some goals that if I believed I could achieve them, was going to be an awesome year, because otherwise I was looking down the barrel of one of my worst years of my life. And so why not try to believe that I can have one of the best years in life? Like, what have I got to lose? And that was probably the mindset I had. Like, why not just set these goals? Like, again, if I look back and go, I've done everything I can to do it, and if I don't hit them, that's fine. But then probably the biggest lesson I thought, now deep down, if you had said, do you truly believe you're going to achieve those goals? And like honesty test, probably not. Like, the belief wasn't there, but it was just that almost stubbornness that this was happening.
Yeah.
And then the more you focus on doing the work and putting it in, and then you come away the journey, and then you're like, actually, some of this is within reach. And then the belief grows, the confidence grows, and sort of then you get a lot further than you probably would have if you just go, okay, I'm going to set a goal of I'll come back at the start of the season next year. And, so that was probably, and again, and then those things don't happen. I don't learn those lessons that, I've now been able to take on, post footy as well.
Yeah, it's good. The lesson I learned around goals, it's who you have to become to work towards it, whether you achieve it or not. It's those changes that you have to make, and you've just described it perfectly there through that example. Pretty handy team, the 2011 Four Nations team. You're playing with some of the all-time greats. What was that like to go? I mean, you've got a decent side at the back of the noughties for the Tigers, and you've had some good years there, but to then elevate yourself to that level, it must have been one hell of an experience.
Yeah, it was unreal, and it's in no secret why, when you look at all players across all rep levels, when they do go into sort of rep teams, they come back, learning, a lot of things, because the caliber of player that you get to play with, and just seeing how they prepare, physically, but just their attention to detail with the game, all the extras, and everything they do. It's just no surprise why they've made those teams, but also the greats, for a long period of time. Like, Darren Lockyer, very fortunate to play in his last tour and last ever game in the Four Nations final. But you having Jonathan Thurston, Cooper Cronk, Cameron Smith, Billy Slater, Greg Inglis, like, these guys are going to go down as immortals, and just seeing what they do, on the field. Again, at the time, you understand how, because those guys are obviously massive already, but you try not to be too starry-eyed, because you're there, and you got to obviously perform and do your job. But it's after the tours, and definitely when you retire, when you look back and you go, you're very fortunate. And I know I was so grateful and fortunate to be able to share the field with these guys.
Yeah, awesome. And I love how you've said that you've still got to do the job. If you get overawed, which I'm sure some players do in that environment, well, you're not going to progress, and you're not going to get the results. That 2011 season, that's probably your high point in terms of the rep honours. Was there like, what was the journey like after that? Like, did you then have an experience with injuries, or like where do you think it? Where do we go from there?
Yeah, so pretty much, started 2012. Yeah, and it just unfortunately was that, you go through, like life, have a setbacks, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's the end of it. It just prepares you for what's sort of coming next. So 2012, started the year, as the Tigers, we weren't sort of playing well, I suppose as a team, and individually I probably, wasn't playing my best. And going into that period where coming into Origin, it was between myself, Michael Jennings, and Josh Morris, and I just wasn't playing good enough, and those guys were playing great footy. They got the sort of picked up an injury the back end of the year. Then you get to sort of 2013, injured my ankle round one of the year, played on for a few more games, did my hamstring, came back from a hamstring, and then sort of said the doctor my ankle's no good, and we finally got it scanned and realised I'd actually been playing with a broken ankle and cracked sores from the ankle for the last 8 weeks.
What?
And I basically, that I couldn't keep playing. And at that time, we just had so many injuries, and can keep playing or get surgery, and that was the season. That was midway through the year. And still remember both myself and Aaron Woods, he had a really bad knee injury. And we thought, look, we need to just show up for the team. We were decimated with injuries. So we said, we'll keep playing until a point in time if we can't make the semis. And looking back, yes, like I always put the team first, but it was that personally detrimental, one, to my obviously own body, like, yes, and because for a half the year I was literally playing on one leg, I was just being a passenger there, because I couldn't run, I couldn't get up on my toes, I couldn't do anything. So sort of struggled that year. Got surgery sort of August, and then didn't start running again to the following January. So sort of 6, 5 months that took me out of running. Then you're sort of at the behind the 8 ball, and sort of was midway through 14, 15, where again that sort of consecutive lower leg injuries sort of does take its toll. And then obviously, and my body type anyway, and sort of Tim Sheen sort of picked it up, and he said it early on, you're going to end up in the back row at some point. So that was sort of around the time where conversations were put me in the back row, and I sort of wanted to start to make that transition. I thought it was going to add more value to the team, but it was just decided sort of early, that sort of late 2014, 15 for the team, that was best that I sort of stayed in the centres, and that's what I did. Then sort of Jason Taylor came on board and had sort of conversations about it, but I suppose being your coach and not really, I suppose, understanding or again knowing me, and not sure again whether I could handle it. And I think it might have been midway through the season where I was just like, I just didn't feel, and again, it was probably right for the team for me to make the move, and then sort of made the move in there, and started playing some really good footy. And I think I knew myself that that was probably my position at that point in my career. That was how my body type was, how the game was evolving. Obviously, taking into account having to probably adapt my game a bit for the injuries, but I was, I suppose, skillful. I could catch and pass the ball, had a lot of skill, and those sort of edge back rollers that could pass and play that link man were sort of providing extra added advantage for teams, and then obviously got that opportunity. I probably surprised people with I suppose the ability to play 80 minutes there. Initially, then had a few good seasons, but and still sort of had injuries, and then that point in the career was obviously managing different parts of the injury. I probably think towards the back end of that part of my career, my best season was, I'd say, probably my 2018 season with Ivan. That I think we had a period, as I mentioned, during that sort of 2013 to sort of 15-16 period, you just have, I think, change over 3 or 4 coaches. So it is hard to, as a team, get that consistency, because anytime you do have a new coach as well, they're coming with a preconceived idea of what the team is and what individuals are. So you have to earn their respect again. And as much as you just get about your business, it does take a bit of focus away from just trying to get better. When you're like, well, where do I stand with this coach? Like, how do they see me fitting into their team? Do I fit their style of play? Do I not? Like, so it is a bit of distraction. So I suppose by the time Ivan came in, his message was pretty clear. He tried to make things really clear for everyone, and and as with a few individuals, had some sort of really strong seasons by being able to do that. So it's sort of like at some, you don't picture your career going in any certain way. You just got to I suppose roll with the cards that are dealt, and having an injury and then coming back was obviously amazing, but it was the successive injuries, and again, a lot of people have the conversation with him now, but the hip injury and slowing me down a bit, which probably took a bit. But I, again, because of the fact, I suppose, the personality I was, no one knew about the pretty much 2013 was play with a broken ankle, and sort of have bone on bone ankle, which still struggle with a bit to this day. But that was more than the hip. Definitely took sort of the yard of pace away, where I just lost that power of the takeoff. But at the time, you make a decision what's best for the team, and putting the team first, and probably was to the detriment of I suppose the body in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wonder how many players are playing busted. They talk about dips in form and why aren't they playing at this level. It must happen all the time. I've got an interview with Jason Chan, which would have already gone out by the time yours does. And he was the Melbourne Storm coach for 10 years. And he shared some stories about people playing with injuries. I broke fibula and tried to run it off for about 10 seconds before I'm like, this pain's unbelievable. I can't do that. I cannot comprehend the ability to push through that sort of pain. Is it because it's just been so drummed into you that it's that team first, you've got a responsibility? Like, I don't know how far into the injury it was when you realised it was broken, but you'd obviously been playing for a few weeks with it. What do you think pushes you on in those moments when you just get it done despite the pain and the discomfort?
Yeah, with the ankle injury, again, initially the doctor's like, oh, it's a bit of bone bruising, and it was just, okay, well, it's nothing, I'll just get on with it, And it was 3 or 4 weeks in, I'm like, I said to the trans, I can't get up on my toes, like I can't. My ankle keeps collapsing. I feel like I'm literally running flat-footed. I can't take off that leg, and then ended up doing the hamstring because I was probably compensating. 2 weeks off of the hamstring, and then come back my first run, just a rehab run, light run from the hamstring, and I'm limping. And the physio's like, "What's wrong? You're having no good." I go, "No, my ankle, I can't run." And then that's when I'm like, "Well, something's wrong here. Like I can't." Just had, and so it was painful, but it was one of those things that you sort of always in a degree of pain. Like you've got a cork here. Like again, when you talk about everyone, every single player has carrying a niggly injury by the middle of the year. Honestly, if you're probably not carrying a niggly injury, you're probably not going hard enough. Like you're probably not putting your body on the line. Like being completely honest, and that is the raw truth. Like there's going to be at least 4 or 5 players having pain-killing injections before the start of every game just to play. Guys who aren't training all week, just to manage their workload, just to play. Like that's just what you do to, because of the nature of the sport. And again, I can't remember what year it was, but there was one particular year, and again, teams go through just really random where there's a lot of a certain type of injury, and it might have been 2016, but we had like about 6 guys with broken ribs, and I still remember there was a lineup to the medical room to get like needles before the game. So we would be like, no, I was before you, like because it was like a 30-minute wait to everyone just one after the other going into the doctor getting needles because everyone just had broken ribs this one year. And again, I think it might have been 2016 because I think there was the year we had our final game at Leichhardt against the Raiders and if we won, we made the semis. Dean Hallertau's last game retired sort of after that. And I'd been needling, broke my ribs broke 2 ribs about 8 weeks earlier, broke in the game, knew I'd done something, sort of got through, I was back in the game, so got through it, and then got an x-ray, 2 broken ribs, so kept playing, just had needle every game, and by the 8-week mark, I was like, yep, that's enough, I don't have to needle it, and 2 minutes in the game, first took a tap, I think I ran into maybe Joey Leilua and Elliot Whitehead off a tap, and they just absolutely crushed me, dropped me, and I felt the pop again, I felt both ribs go. And I looked up at the scoreboard and it was like two minutes into the first half. And I'm like, you just know, it's like, I can't go off. No. Like I'm not burning interchange. I've just got to suck it up for 38 minutes. And I know I've just got to hang in there with the pain and I'll get a needle at half time just to take the pain away. So that when you talk about that's sometimes, that happens where you're like, you're busted. You've just got to, again, grit your teeth and do it. And, like examples of Keith Galloway early on in my career where I think 2009 we were making a run at the finals. He had a fracture in his toe and really bad turf toe, had to needle every single game and wore a boot all week, wore a boot to the game, took the boot off to put his playing boot on, played the game, got off the field, put a boot on, like a moon boot on, and did that for 6 weeks straight, because we had a run at the finals. So, it's some guys that have just put their bodies and through plenty of hell and probably, and I think to be honest, it is probably, that's more an old school mentality. I do think the players these days and the medical staff are more looking after players to make sure, they've got the long-term best interest at heart. Now, there's definitely times where, they're going to have to, I suppose, suck it up, especially if it's, to make a final or a grand final. Anyone will do anything to, do that. I think they're more cautious of that than, I suppose, previous years where it's like, it's if you can run, like if it was a soft tissue injury and of risk, different because like, well, if you got a strained hammy, you're probably going to tear it. But if you had something that you just deal with the pain, then get on and deal with it. If you've got a broken hand, a broken finger, strap it up, get out there and just deal with it.
Amazing. For us mere mortals, it's actually mind-boggling to think of that level of commitment, but that's what separates, I guess. We'll actually get to that because I know that's one of the things you're really passionate about is the difference between good and elite. I just wanted to talk, you mentioned Ivan. One of the key elements of your training company, One Training, is you talk about connection. I've heard Ivan interviewed a few times now and he talks a lot about that. And his teams always look like they've got that sort of bond. Was he big on that even back then in 2018 of like bringing everyone together and doing some things differently than what you'd had with other coaches?
Yeah, I think and I think all coaches do it in their own ways, understanding. I I suppose being able to connect and have the team connect on different levels. I think Ivan definitely, probably did it better than most, but in his own way. I think for him it was about trying to get to know people, on a different level, and whatever that may be, really knowing a bit about, their family and, something outside that none of the team would know, and just getting to really know. And I know a lot of coaches are, from never played under sort of Wayne Bennett, but I hear one of his real strengths is that ability to really care and get to know players on that level, and why so many feel connected and playing with him. So Ivan was great, with that, and I think he's been able to show what he's done there at the Panthers. And I suppose for what he probably his biggest strength, I think what he brought to the Tigers, which at the time was needed, was just a sense of clarity and really and focus, because again we had so many changes in coaches, in styles, in what does the coach want from me, where he was very specific. Okay, your job is XYZ. That's all I want you to do. These three things, 3 effort areas. I don't care about stats. I don't care about this. If you do these 3 things, that does your role for the team. And so he just simplified everything. So it's like, cool, because if I do this, that means that can unlock, Luke Brooks, for example, when he does that, it can unlock that person. So at a time where we had, so much, a lack of clarity across a number of years in how we were going to play, our style, what the coach wanted, he brought that, which I think had the biggest sort of short-term impact for us.
Yeah, I remember reading you were talking about, it might have even been your debut, the clarity, the certainty that Tim Sheens had given you to when you get this opportunity, you got to back yourself. Is that something that once you'd had that experience of having that real certainty, you could really pick up when it wasn't there?
Yeah, I think so. I think with, and again, Tim Sheen's is really good as well. His clarity was probably a bit more detailed. Like, he was very meticulous and not sort of as simple, but you're very clear on, I suppose, a detailed game plan. So, it was a different way to that, but you just knew, I suppose what you had to do to get back into it. So, from Tim Sheen's point of view, if, you had the license to throw the ball around, but we practiced it over and over. But if it sort of didn't pay off, it was very much, all right, we go back and earn the right. And earning the right means we run hard, we find a quick play the ball. So his simple game plan was quick play the balls. I don't care about meters. I want you to find your front, play the ball quick. So if you've got the ball and you're making a run, you're not trying to have tackle breaks and if you're back in that phase of the game where it's not, we're back to fundamentals, it was play the ball quick. And again, I think even the 05 team, they built their momentum off just playing fast and play balls, So that was his simple way of, having clarity. For Ivan, it was more, he didn't have an elaborate as a game plan, but he was very direct and specific on your role and what your role was in the team. So for me, it was about, making sure 3 things, leading the kick chase, making sure for my edge was leading the kick chase, knowing how important that was. It was making sure that, I'm, again, leading my edge in defence, and what that specifically was that every time if they shifted the ball and someone got to my outside, I had to go and put pressure on them. So it's very specific, and when you're fatigued in the game, it was just autopilot. So I knew, okay, my role, as soon as someone got to my outside, I go at them, which helps the rest of the edge. And the last one is every time, Luke Brooks gets the ball, I've got to be pushing up as a running option. So again, same thing. As soon as he gets the ball, it's a trigger. And if I just focus on those 3 things, all the tries, the line breaks, all those other things come off the back of it, because these are things I can control. And it just makes it simple. It makes the game simple. You don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry about, I'm going to get dropped because I'm not, making certain meters or because contact meters or any of these things that are good for personal stats, but have no, and Supercoach, but aren't the things that contribute to the team. And so if everyone does those effort areas and the things that they're clear on that contribute to the team success, and overall the team will win. And if the team's winning, individuals get recognised. And so it's a byproduct.
I love that. And that's just a great analogy to take into business, which we'll get to in a sec, but also just every area of your life. So often people overcomplicate things, overthink things, and sometimes just breaking it down to three things is the best way to go. You mentioned that the Tigers '05 team and then those years after. Was there one year in particular that you look back on and go, that was a real missed opportunity for us? Because there was always, they were always a big chance, those sides, but it never quite eventuated into getting the result that you probably hoped for.
I think probably 2010, 20. You probably said 2011 as well, but 2010 definitely. Like 2010, we were top four. We played. That was the infamous game against the Roosters that first week. I actually, again, was not in that game. Had broken my jaw a few weeks earlier, and for me, sitting on the sideline watching that, and just felt like you watch a game and you're in control, but then everything sort of that could go wrong does go wrong. And for me, sitting there watching and thinking, if we had won and got a week off because we're top four, I'm like, perfect. It's enough time to come back from my jaw injury. We lose, and then just the way the finals were structured, we had to go down to Canberra to play Canberra, even as a top four team against them. And I came back and I played, and we got the win. Then you sort of get a bit of confidence, go into play. Then you go on the side of the draw of the Dragons, who were sort of red hot sort of favourites then, and. Our number of sort of our probably leading forward at that time, Todd Payton, in a captain's run warm-up, rolls his ankle on a tennis ball and then is out for the game. And he was, getting our players player, through that final series. It's, and then you have that, and then you're in, the game. It was very much a back and forth game. And a couple of things in penalties could have gone our own probably in this day. It's definitely go away, and we look at penalty goals and win a game, and then. Doesn't go away and lose by a field goal. So definitely that was the one that got away, I think.
Yeah, people talk about it all the time as like everything has to go right. You have to have so many different moments, and you look at the Broncos last year, they were gone that many times and just everything seemed to unfold for them. I hadn't heard that story. So he was killing it back in those days, and he rolled on a tennis ball of all things.
Yeah, so all of our sort of warm-ups, again, Strings are very big on skills, hand-eye coordination stuff, so all our warm-ups are different, tennis balls and just doing hand-eye coordination. And I don't know,
straight ball.
Straight ball, went to take off, rolled his ankle on it and ruled him out, which was, it's just, you talk about key players, making a big difference, and that's something that he was, for a middle at the time, like he was just, playing it, and you look at, I suppose, the modern day Penrith where you got that Isaiah Yeo in the middle, directing it with his passing game. That's what Toddy Payton was for us. He was, he sort of said he was a halfback in a front row's body. He just had his skill set with the ball, was unbelievable, and. Him and he had the ability to ball play in the middle just unlocked everything and our attack on the edge. So, yeah, definitely was hurt us.
Yeah, I bet. Now, you've talked about a lot of your injuries, and I wanted to get to business now. Was business initially in that fitness space, and was that a product of the fact that you'd spent so much time in rehab and learning to deal with different areas of fitness, or was more coincidental than that?
No, the business started, again, I was always interested in various businesses, started, and when I went into university, straight out of school, found as a really good outlet to focus on education, whilst I was sort of dabbling and starting a few businesses, but had a really negative experience with uni. They just didn't understand the needs and demands of sport, and eventually dropped out. Things have changed, more accommodating now, but dropped out, had a negative experience, got into doing just a fitness qualification, Cert 3 and 4, did it online, just found, and I did really well, and I enjoyed school, but struggled with lack of support. And so for me and my now business partner, who was like a lot of athletes and started his footy career, in school, and put all his eggs in the footy, played reserve grade for a number of years, in injuries, and just decided to hang them up, and just had to look at the next step. And he went and did his fitness qualification at TAFE, and we just sort of had the conversation like, there's nothing built for athletes. That education is so stacked against athletes. There's a lot of advantages that athletes have, but education isn't one of them. So we thought we want to build an education course or program solely for athletes, and we want to do it via the fitness qualification because it's relatable, number one. So for athletes who are disengaged in school learning for a number of years and have a lack of confidence to get back into learning, that it's a very good transition. At the very least, they can understand more about training their body to help them again with rehab, with their get the best out of their body, and they got a qualification to help if there's nothing else on transition. But at the very least, it's a stepping stone. So we partner with an RTO to deliver the fitness qualifications in a way that best suited athletes. Did that for a number of years, and very fortunate that the owner of that RTO became a good friend, mentor, and decided sort of later on towards the back end of our career to help us become our own RTO or registered training organisation or private college. And back end of my career, we did that. Built one from scratch, which took a few years, and it was a long process. But that allowed us to now sort of run our own college. And aside from the fitness qualifications for athletes, we work across a number of different cohorts with the fitness qualifications. And then we work also, with job and delivering job skill programs. So people who are requiring job skill programs to get back into the workforce, in particular digital literacy courses, we deliver that. So we sort of uncovered with sort of One Training is our as an education company, our strength and our unique strength is delivering and designing tailored education for unique groups who have specific challenges, and how we support them through successful education outcomes. So fitness, that's I suppose where we ended up with that, where we started and why we started, and everything that I suppose dictated how we operate within One Training is all based on, again, understanding that we started at a point that there wasn't a tailored solution to assist athletes, and so we used the same methodology and framework with any group we're trying to deliver education for.
Yeah, so good. I wanted to focus on one particular person, one particular example, because part of this podcast is about those transferable skills between sport and other areas of life. It's also the flow-on effect that either can have, whether it's sport flowing onto confidence in, particularly for young people, into their other areas of life, but then having that purpose away from footy, how that impacts it. And it's funny, I noticed on your page there, you've got the success story, Tariq Sims. He was one of those players that almost had a renaissance in his career where he suddenly just was playing at a whole other level. And no coincidence that at that same time he's working with you guys on getting that purpose away from his sport. Yeah. How important is that when you are working with athletes, that you're showing them that, yes, we're going to help you with your footy career and it's just going to really help you, but it's about building that identity really of who they are beyond football?
Yeah, and I think for us, it's the biggest thing is confidence. The athletes, and then this is all athletes, but in particular NRL players, like you have to, when you cross that line, you have to essentially run into a brick wall. You have to have the confidence and have, if you're, second guessing yourself, you're going to get hurt, you're going to get injured, you're not going to be playing first grade. So it's very hard to then step off that field and show vulnerability in any sense and say, and understand, okay, I struggle with learning, I struggle with education. So a lot just avoid it. Cause I have to keep myself bulletproof because I have to run on the field and run into a brick wall. So it's just about helping athletes realize that it's not that they can't do it. It's just a skill. It's like them not running for 6 years. Yeah, it's going to take time for them to get used to running again. So it's not building the confidence that it's not that they have a lack of knowledge. It's just they haven't practiced that skill. So how do we then change or adapt it in a way that they do understand? So when they realize they actually understand it, it's just in a different way. They can have that confidence. And what that does, if you build that confidence off the field, again, it takes the pressure off being the performance on the field, because a lot feel like all my eggs are in this basket. When they realize I've actually achieved something off the field, okay, my identity is not now just solely tied to my performance. And so that then relaxes them, allows them to not be so tense and play. And again, and not even like have done some studies, and there's been other research studies to show that those who engage in off-field, doesn't have to be education, but off-field initiatives have longer careers, picked in more games, and have higher honours, and most likely hold leadership positions in teams. So, and that's the key principle to it. It is, you need to build confidence away from sport, because then that takes the pressure off what you're doing on the field, and your eggs aren't in that basket.
Oh, I love it. And anything that you can take the pressure off is going to have a really positive impact across the board. So that's a great one. Now, you mentioned you're working with a lot of groups that may be disadvantaged. One in particular stood out to me, that you do a lot of training with First Nations people.
Yeah.
I had that experience at Clontarf going back a few years now when I was at Fox Sports, and they talked about how when an Indigenous male can get a job, then it actually literally closes the gap. So the life expectancy just skyrockets. It must be so fulfilling to be able to do that work and knowing the impact it's going to have when you're working with those sorts of groups.
Yeah, and again, that, and I suppose the opportunity we got to start to work with some of these groups in particular, some really disadvantaged Indigenous job seekers, came about from the work we do with each of our successive cohorts, with those athletes, with whether it's other groups, and we just applied the same principle as we did with athletes. It's like, okay, what are some of the barriers that are stopping from re-engaging in education and then into the workforce? And what we uncovered from a lot of that was a lot of this group just felt disconnected with their culture. And someone who's not Indigenous, for me, it was like, okay, how do I partner with the best people and the best organisations to help address this thing so that we can do what we do best, and that then tailor education. So we designed and delivered a program in a way where we can address and re-engage with these groups, and then really open the eyes to, again, that confidence, and they can achieve more, and then getting them to turn up and actually finishing a part qualification and finishing something and coming away with something tangible that they may not have done before or done for a lot of years. So then the confidence they get out of that, they feel like, okay, I am ready to then apply for a job. And then again, if they get a job, that just that sense of confidence and achievement, and what you can do in a short space of time if you do it in the right way. I think it was something particularly in that space hadn't been done before, and why we've been able to see some really fantastic results and an impact we have. Like, one of the I suppose that the biggest things we help provide with an aspect of a program. We deliver a digital literacy program where we provide all this. They have a refurbished laptop where participants use a laptop, and on completion, for only those who do complete the course, they get to take their laptop home. So not only is that really good incentive for them to keep working through towards completion, but the impact that has goes beyond them just having a laptop. For some households, this is a laptop that's going to support their children and helping them through school, with access to digital devices that they may not have access to. So the social impact is not just one-fold. There's a 3 to 4 time multiplier on that. So and it just comes down to how we sort of tailor education to try to build confidence, connect, and build that sense of community, and get some successful education, and depending on the groups, hopefully some employment outcomes as well.
That's brilliant, mate. I love that. The flow-on effect. It's always, it's not just the 1 + 1 = 2, is it? It's like there's often an exponential impact of that sort of stuff. So good. Do you get some of your students back and look at how far they've gone and what they've achieved since then? Have you had any moments like that where you're like, wow, look at the impact of what we've done?
Yeah, and probably one of the great things is in some of the programs we have run, we actually have employed some of the old participants as mentors to support the program. So that's probably one of the most rewarding things that we've been able to do, where participant 12 months later is actually coming back and one of the support mentors for a course, and being like, literally, I've been in your seat 12 months ago. Now I'm this is sort of the work I'm doing. I'm exploring other things, but I've now got the confidence to do that. So yeah, that's probably been one of the the really pleasing and aspects of that.
Love it. You talk about finding what separates the good from the elite. Now, that's obviously a long conversation. You're not going to be able to lay that all out in a short period of time. But if you just give the listeners and the viewers a snapshot of what that looks like, because there's plenty of people listening, I'm sure, will consider themselves at that sort of good level, but they also know they've got more in the tank. Is there anything that a tip or a couple of ideas you can give them to help them take that leap?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost for me, that's being in a high performance environment for 15 years. That is, I suppose, what I've been involved with. So every single day, everything is, I suppose, scrutinized. You have external people to push you, but at the end of the day, it's for you to keep growing every day to, again, separate yourselves from the competition to be elite. If you're a good player, you'll last a couple of years. You need to be an elite player to last longer, and you need to be a champion player to be one of the greats. And you need to find and keep finding ways to be able to do that. So I've always, had a curiosity with finding how can I get better in all aspects, physical, mental, mindset, whatever, ways that that may be. One of the biggest, I suppose, again, ongoing lessons that I've found now with business is that everything I do within business, and now very fortunate to start connecting with a lot of, business leaders, executives, just having, conversations, being able to share ideas, but all of it is around, I relate it back to sport, and whether it's my own personal experiences, what I've seen work, what I've seen hasn't worked, and to help, because they're just principles that apply in not even business, but in life, first of all, and we spoke about it before, the clarity, like if you're in a business, or if you're operating or running a business, if you're, it just even simply is, if your staff can't tell you, did I win the week, then you don't have their job clear enough. Like, at the end of the Friday afternoon, can you say to your staff member, did you win the week? Yes or no? Like, you play footy, you've got a scorecard, yeah, but you also, too, even deeper than that, again, in my instance with Ivan, I know, did I make every kick chase? Did I pressure? And if I didn't do that, and if I did it 80%, I know I wasn't fully on. And it's very measurable, very clear. And what that does is that just be providing clarity for your team, is, an example, but also yourself. Like, for me, trying to grow my business and even grow personally, what is winning the week looking like for me, and being clear and not being pulled in every direction. So, but then, even going, that's just when you're looking at, a week snapshot, then making sure, well, what direction am I going? Like, understanding what's the North Star, like 3 to 5 years, who's the person I want to be? So you don't know how you're going to get there, but you need to know what direction you're going. And then you work back from there. One of the best, and again, I suppose, if I can give the best piece of advice from what good to elite looks like, it is in what I learnt from that HIP and the goal setting framework I use, with my team and share with a lot of sort of business leaders now. It is, rather than set the 12-month goals, and I do have some arguments or discussions, let's call it, with people who disagree with me, which is fine. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I'm just sharing my experience from what I know has worked, and that is, I very much don't like people who set yearly goals with the SMART framework. Achieve, smart, realistic, achievable. Like, what's that? Come on,
yeah,
like,
I'm with you.
What is? Why would you want to go, oh, I can't wait for this year, I'm going to have an average year? Like, I'm like, so I reframe it, and it's like, okay, we're sitting here, February 19, 2027, you've just had the best 12 months of your life. Tell me what happened. And again, it's not saying, the unthinkable, but saying, well, let's look across the life. If you say, yeah, this was actually the best year out of my last 5 years, well, what happened? Did you travel? Did you accomplish something? Like, what happened? That re-engineer it. And again, how I applied it for, without really knowing the framework, but my hip injury, in that situation where like, this is going to be the worst year of my life, well, no. What does the best year of my life look like? And in that stage, the best year of my life was, I'm going to win the comp. I'm going to come back and play 90 days. I'm going to play for Australia. Because again, that's the stage of my life I was at. So again, that's something that I've just used. And again, in some years I get, I achieve these things, go, wow, I've gone, completely further. And some years I don't. And it's like, okay, what? And some of the reasons why I didn't achieve that was like with the hip. Did I have clear on what are the daily things or the weekly things I need to do? Because I can't just say, yeah, that's awesome. I want to go on a 3-month holiday. Well, what am I doing daily to set myself up to be able to do that? Like, and so biggest thing, and that's just sort of one example, but so everything I do, I relate back to footy. Resilience is a massive thing. People in business and running businesses, it is like a non-stop preseason where there's no guarantee you're even going to get to round one. There's no guarantee you win a game. There's no guarantee you're even going to win a comp, and you don't know when that is. So it is just a constant grind, but knowing that at some stage, like in a game of footy, the momentum will turn. Now, the good players are the ones who understand that and hang in there. The, I suppose, inconsistent and young players, they just can't handle, and just because they don't know where that endpoint is, and drop off. And so just knowing that sometimes you just have to outlast people. And, by the end of it, there's not a lot of people standing, and the same applies with business. So, like, there's just everything I look back and go, okay, that is a specific example we can apply for people in business and in life.
Mate, I said you wouldn't be able to do it in a short period of time, but that is 5 minutes of absolute gold. So much good stuff in there. And yeah, I agree. My mentor in 2012, he said you got to have impossible goals. Yeah. Like, why would you settle for that? And exactly what you described there. He's like, if you times that goal, you use this example of sales, times 4, and you worked as hard as you could, and you still only made it halfway, you still double what you were going to have originally. Yeah. And it's just about pushing the boundaries. I'm going to definitely package that little piece because that was so good. Hey, I saw you mentioned just before, you said you're always looking for things to improve, and one of the things that you've done recently I noticed is fasting. That's something I've done a couple of times, and I know there's heaps of people now talking about it. It definitely has a real boost on your health. What was your experience like? Because for me, I'm a foodie. I found it one of the most challenging things I've ever done, but also the payoff was so good as well in terms of the difference it made to energy and just how well I was feeling.
Yeah, I've been intermittent fasting for sort of years now. I did it sort of the back end of my footy career as a really good way for gut health. Had one of the years I just had constant, flu and illnesses and battled that through the year, and just got onto that and felt great, and really helped with sort of some gut health. And again, it helps in off season too when you're not training to sort of keep the weight off. But I'd always wanted to give it a crack. Last year was a really challenging year. Business was good. We have a lot of, again, probably the biggest year from a business point of view, and a lot of new opportunities, which was highly stressful and is going to help accelerate things in the future, but required a lot of attention. And also had a young sort of son who was experiencing some health challenges, nothing sort of major, but it was stressful on the family, not sleeping and things like that. So my health, and I consciously made the choice. Okay, this is just a season in life where I'm making the choice that it's to keep training, to keep healthy, even though I know it's going to help me with work. It was just the work that needed to be done, the lack of sleep. I just couldn't keep up, I suppose, my health. So I'm like, well, this is just a period, head down, let's get through it. And then start of sort of this year, the little man was starting to, really sort of grow past a few things, and go, okay, now's the time, I can reprioritize. And again, I think being aware of it was first and foremost, because I know how important that is for everything, and I need to set example for family and put yourself first at some situations. But that last year wasn't the time. Started training and then just felt like I just needed a reset of the system to really kick into gear, and training and gut health, and just having sort of a year, I suppose, of lack of training and unhealthy here and there. So I was always thinking about it, and then had a chat to a couple of people and about doing, and they had previously done it, and I'm like, stuff it, I'm just going to do it. And I thought, again, just go ahead and do it, just give it a crack. And then and had a chat to a few people who did it, and just gave me some advice, which then I implemented, and which is, don't just, if you're going to do it, actually, don't just go, oh, I'm going to stop eating now. Go set yourself up properly like you're playing a game. prepare your meal the day before. Make sure you try to reduce the carbs the day before to help your cravings. Have a plan with your hydration. Have a plan when you start you're hungry, what you're going to do. This is what you're in. And so just planning it out and, did it. Was because I've gotten the mindset, again, talking about the subconscious mind, I just said to myself, I'm doing it. Like, I'm not eating. So I think, and again, that was probably the one thing that the advice was, don't say, hopefully I can get through it, because that's your mind giving yourself an excuse. Just say, I'm doing it and I'm not eating. And you tell yourself that. And I almost get the mindset, I'm like, if I can get through the first night, I know I'll easily do it, because I'm like, at the very least, if that second night I'm starving, I've done enough army camp. Again, the proof and all the resilience you build from doing hard things. I'm like, I've had enough sleepless nights where I've been in hospital with my young bloke. I've done army camps that I can go a whole night and not sleep and not eat. And then I've just got to get through one day easy. So I was like, and as soon as I wake up next morning, I'm like, oh, I'll be sweet. And there was some, dips in energy, particularly the second day. But I felt really good. Afterwards, felt fantastic. Resetted the system. Helped with my training as well. I think it helped metabolize the foods I was eating. Post that. Helped with my joint sort of pain. I was definitely carrying too much body weight. I want to get back into running. Personally, I feel great when I run, and I just, with all bone on bone, ankle, knee, and hip injuries, I just couldn't run at the sort of weight I was at. So I again, all the physical and mental benefits. So without being a doctor, and I definitely recommend, and it's something I will be doing, something whether it's, twice a year or 3 times a year, we'll be definitely doing it as a good reset.
Love it. So good. Before you go, and thank you, because you've shared plenty today, do you have like a moment as a player, involved in a sporting team in some way, fan, doing leadership work, where you just look back so fondly, whether it's the goosebumps or just that euphoria, just a magic moment that the people who are listening can really relate to?
I think playing days, your debut, like you always remember your debut, but I just remember running out the tunnel, 40,000 people at Suncorp was just crazy, and that was really eye-opening. Scoring a try and debut and winning, so that feeling was unbelievable. Probably the second moment playing days was winning the Four Nations final. Again, not only for winning, looking side by side and seeing future immortals, but it was more the what it took to get there in that year. So that was probably a moment. And probably the third thing, which we probably didn't touch on, but facial injury I had in 2019, difficult for a lot of reasons. Again, the uncertainty and around that, it really changed I suppose, the structure of my face, and it sort of changed a lot of things. And a lot of people just go, why would you come back and play? And for me, at that point in time, I didn't understand why. I just had a burning desire to come back and play, and at the time I didn't know why. And it was only once I'd come back and got back, I realised what it was, because a lot of people, when I ask ex-players, and like, when do you know the time's right? When you're getting there, and a lot of players ask other players, like, how do you know? Like, when do you know? And everyone says, when you know, you know. And I'm like, well, I definitely don't feel like now's the time. And a lot of them said, what's your fondest memories? And the one thing they said is, being able to share, aside from all the stuff with the players, but being able to share memories with the kids that you can last forever. And biggest thing with the facial injury, my daughter at the time was 1, and I'm like, she wasn't old enough to understand that her dad played footy. So I just wanted literally to come back for her to experience getting on the field with me, and to at least be old enough to share some memories, to understand that her dad played footy. And so it wasn't a play, it wasn't a win a comp, that was literally why I came back when everyone said you're crazy to come back, but that was my motivation. And so there was a moment at the end of that last year, we lost to Sharks in the last game, missed out on the finals, 9th again, and I hadn't signed a contract for the 2020 year at that stage, so I thought I was potentially done. And it was a moment I shared with my daughter on there, and I was very fortunate. I think it might have been Greg Porteous got a photo of myself and just giving my daughter a kiss. And for me, that was, and I've got that blown up at home, and that was my motivation. And people talk about, the why that drives you, and how that changes different situations. But for that period of my life, that was the why. And I look back at, they're probably really key moments, I suppose, through my footy career, which stand out to me.
I think everyone can relate to that if they're a parent, of just how important that is. Yeah, you can't fit everything into a chat. I was thinking, do I talk about that particular injury described as injuries like you had been in a car crash? I always think in those sort of moments what it must have been like for your family when they're watching you go back out after having to experience the aftermath of what was a pretty horrific injury. Do you remember what they were like?
Yeah, they weren't happy. I don't think any of them were happy. I'm pretty sure when my wife sort of flew down to New Zealand and to the hospital and saw me first time, she's like, "You're never playing footy again." And I said, "Yeah, okay." I said, "Look, we'll see. We'll just see what the doctor says." And again, that was straight away. Like the next day, I knew I wasn't done. And again, going back to the hip, I was like, if I do everything, and I made the agreement. If I said to her, "All right, if the doctor after the surgery and everything, if they say we recommend you don't play again, I won't play." And I made that promise to her because I said, like, at least I can hang my hat on. I gave it all. I don't want to say, "Oh, what if?" And so that was sort of like she was hoping the doctor would say no. And then the surgery said, "Oh, well, you got 12 plates in your face, so it's probably as strong as ever." So that's probably not what she wanted to hear.
I love it. Very good. Chris, thank you so much. Some great stories, even better wisdom that people can take away with them. So, yeah, thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. There's a theme that runs through this whole conversation, and that's clarity. Clarity of role, clarity of identity, clarity under pressure. Chris didn't talk about talent. He didn't talk about being gifted. He talked about standards, about knowing your job, about showing up the same way when you're injured, under pressure, or being overlooked. That's the gap most people avoid looking at. So where in your life are you operating at good, but you know you're capable of elite? Is it your preparation, your recovery, your leadership at home, your discipline when no one's watching? The shift from good to elite isn't dramatic, it's deliberate. And once you see it, you can't go back to pretending that you didn't. If this conversation raised your standard even a fraction, make sure you're subscribed. We're building something here, and it's not for people who are happy to stay just good. And if it hit home, send it to someone who holds a high standard or someone who needs to lift theirs. You've taken the time to listen to this whole episode. Now it's time to take action. Commit to one thing you've learned today and make it happen. And to avoid any obstructions, join the Sport is Life movement by clicking on the link in the show notes.